The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Hey. Good morning, listeners. So I am delighted to share that we are, yes, you are too, because you have got my books. You are part of our family, Kiva family. And folks, I'm not affiliated with Kiva, which is KIV as in Victor, A.org, where for the International Women's Month, I ended up helping a couple of women entrepreneurs, and as together over the whole global effort, 20,000 women entrepreneurs were helped, and you are part of it because you got our books. You got our books, Expert to Influencer and the Entrepreneur's Garden. The profits, partial profits from those books have gone to help those women entrepreneurs. And I want to share my deepest gratitude with you. So thankful to you. And folks, for those of you who got our books, thank you. And for those who have not got your copies, please get your copies, because not only you will learn how to go from becoming, just, taking your expertise and how you can become an influencer from an expert, or if you're looking to grow your business or starting your business, the Entrepreneur's Garden will get you started. So folks, go get it. And for those of you who have got it, please share it with a friend or family, because with you together, we will continue helping other entrepreneurs as we continue marching forward. And also, I want to share my prayers and sending out love and hugs and positive vibes to folks who are suffering in the world. There's a lot of things going on, and sending up prayers and thoughts. And as we continue, folks, let's just pray. Let's do what we can, taking actions, whether it is sharing donations or helping other entrepreneurs. It is so important. So take out that 1 hour of your time every month as I call upon you and help someone with no strings attached. And let's bring on our guest, Mayo Best. Welcome, Mayo.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good morning. So Mayo, we get started from childhood. I know it may be like, childhood. So here's my question to you. What's one of your fond memories from your childhood?
Fond memories from childhood. I had I didn't have a lot of friends, but I had a good amount of friends. But I had one friend in particular, which is my best friend. And I have to say probably about 75% of my probably condemning stories come with my partner in crime at the time. I had a pretty good childhood, I think. Definitely in terms of my family and the friends I had. things got a little funky around the 80s in Washington, D.C., which is where I'm originally from. But before probably about 1985, 86 or so, things were extremely innocent, I'll say.
So, any story that you remember where you got into trouble?
One that I want to share. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah, a lot of the trouble that we got into, I think as a kid, it was really kind of innocent fun. Things like, we used to do this thing. We go to the apartment building across the street from our house, and there was this. He was the landlord for the building, and we were horrible to him. Unfortunately, we would do things like go to the building, go to different doors, and we used to call it, what was it called? It's like knicker knocking or something like that. So we go from door to door, knock on people's doors in their apartments, and run. We thought this was the funniest thing to do. Um, and the whole idea was not to get caught, of course, but we did a couple times. He hated for us to come into his building for good reason. Sorry to anyone who might be watching this, dealing with the menace that we were as kids. But yeah, that's those are some of the stories that we used to do as children, but kind of innocent overall.
Well, that's children being children. So, as you continued growing up,
Mhm.
did did you have any aspirations? You wanted to become a fireman or Superman?
Mm.
Superman, like there's so many kids who'll be reading Marvel comics and thinking, "Oh, I could be a superhero or do this or do that."
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Well, as a kid, I was really short. I'm still fairly short now. But as a child, I was even shorter, and all of my friends are always bigger than me. So there were certain types of sports that I couldn't really participate in as actively, or I would say as effectively as they could, like football, basketball, and stuff like that. So I would I kind of started gravitating towards like the martial arts and things like gymnastics, which was funny because nobody kind of where I was where I'm from were into those type of sports so much. So yeah, in the beginning I really wanted to be. It was funny as a child, you just don't get it, but I used to want to be a ninja, which was pretty much an amalgamation of kung fu and everything else that I was seeing on TV. But I just classified all that as ninjutsu. So that's what I really wanted to do, was be a ninja.
Well, I totally get what you're saying because I was short till I was 15 and really short. And what would happen is they would have us line up.
Mm-hmm.
You're going for some sports or you're going for to library. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
the shortest kids would be sitting in the front, and shortest kids would be the first in the line, sitting in the class. So sitting
Mm-hmm.
up front in the class wasn't a problem for me because
Mm-hmm.
I always loved to raise my hand. And
Mm-hmm.
so that wasn't an issue. But it was these other students mocking.
Mm.
Oh, there goes the shorties.
Right.
We the cool ones will join later. And it's just those type of comments. And I gotta
Right.
say, kids can be innocent, and yet sometimes kids can be mean.
Yes, they can. Yeah, I've experienced a little bit of both for sure. Funny thing is though, on the what I wanted to be in the very beginning when I was younger, yeah, it was I wanted to be a ninja and martial artist slash gymnast and all this other stuff. But as I started getting to around 13 or 14, at the time, New Edition, if anybody's around that knows who New Edition actually is, New Edition, a singing group, I started to want to be every last one of the members in New Edition because I couldn't figure out which one was the best. And oddly enough, that honestly became the impetus for what I actually started getting into a few years later, which is more of the arts, as it relates to writing and music and theater and other things of that nature.
That is so fascinating how the lives take different twists and turns.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about art, and you
Mm-hmm.
talked about three things: writing,
Mm-hmm.
music, theater. What's your favorite?
That's always been a difficult question to answer. Um, and I think at this point, I'm 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 a little bit more removed from doing those things than I used to be, at least in its rawest form. But I would say that it really honestly depends on what it is you're trying to convey. As to, I never kind of look at them as one kind of being pitched up against the other, as much as I kind of look at it as like, there's some things that writing does a really good job of expressing, and then there are things that music can do that writing can't do alone. So it's more like which tool is best for, I would say, the expression or emotion that you're trying to convey. Kind of look at it like that, because honestly, like for instance, and it's funny because this is how my evolution worked with all three of them. In the beginning, I was only writing, I didn't do any music at all. And then at some point, I started falling in love with music. And then, okay, well, writing just fit very well with songs and music. So they came together in that respect. So, and I think that's kind of where, my philosophy about this kind of comes from. It just kind of really depends. And they all, honestly, the beauty of it is that they all can actually work together in concert. No pun intended.
Well, you put it beautifully, Mayo, because you're right. There is art is art, and every art has its different form of expression. So recently, I was sitting down and writing content for my
Mm,
social media blog post, and I was just sitting there staring at the computer, and I'm like, gosh. Usually, I go out for nature walks, and that will
mm-hmm,
give me some inspiration and creativity. But it
mm-hmm,
remained stale for a couple of days. And then I decided, why don't I go on a museum walk where what I
mm,
can do is that they've got sculptures. As you're
mm,
walking on the trail, so I was looking at the sculptures, stopping at the different sculptures and thinking, what was the artist thinking? And
mm,
just in that, I was looking, there was this sculpture, like, from one angle, it looked like women's legs. From one angle, it looks like elephants' trunks.
mm,
And that got my imagination going,
mm,
and it really spurred my creativity. So you're
mm,
absolutely right. There is art is art. So as you
mm.
continued your journey, where did you land first? Did have you been an entrepreneur whole of your life, or did it take a detour?
I would say that all of my life I've had entrepreneurial influence. And that's because a lot of times I classify myself as a second generation entrepreneur. My parents were very entrepreneurial, and so was my sister, honestly. And even to this day, my sister even more so than me. Because I grew up around business, and the funny thing is, growing up, I had no interest really in business as a child, but there were little kind of elements that would kind of fall off into my life that I would pick up on. Like for instance, my sister started out and she had a lemonade stand, and she was selling these little styrofoam cups of juice. Um, well, lemonade actually. I'm sorry. So she was selling these styrofoam cups of lemonade, and I saw this as a kid and was like, huh, that's interesting. So I would stand beside her and start selling with her. Well, later on, when the concept of money began to actually really affect me, I was thinking, this is actually a pretty good idea for making money. So I actually started doing the same thing um, when I became old enough myself, because my sister was 7 years older than me. So when I got about her age, I was able to do my own lemonade stand and then add candy to it and so forth. So little but surely, I would say my entrepreneurial journey was sort of it was definitely massaged and cultivated over time, just because I grew up around it so much. Does that answer your question?
It does answer the question. And
Okay.
so as you were growing up into entrepreneurship while you were a
Mhm.
child, so in your 20s, which area did you focus on?
Well, during my 20s, actually, I was definitely heavily into the arts. During my
Hmm.
20s is when I actually attended the studio theater acting conservatory. Um, Around that time, yes, it was 100% arts. I didn't, well, I can't honestly say that. There were little things like multi-level marketing companies and stuff like that that I kind of dibbled and dabbled with. But my passion at the time was definitely into acting during my 20s. And also music. I did a lot of songwriting and stuff and producing my own little music during that time period. But yeah, during that period, it was really arts. It didn't honestly transition until after I did a show on HBO called The Wire. When I did that, I actually left DC and then moved to California. And once I moved to California, after about that first year, things spiraled out of control in a negative way.
Hmm.
Now that's a whole nother story and chapter, but that period of time, we kind of honestly started planning the roots for my transition at that point.
So, how was your experience when you were acting for the HBO show Wire, and did it air?
Yes, absolutely. I did The Wire on season 3. And this, for those that know, because apparently the Wire has a pretty good following. For those that know, it was a season where Stringer Bell dies, and I did about 7 episodes in that season out of 12. So yeah, it was a pretty good run.
Well, that's great. And how did you transition out of the career acting into entrepreneurship, and what was your first venture?
Well, you know, funny enough, I had actually gone through a divorce. So when I had
Mm.
gone through the divorce, that was like a major pivot. Because I'll be a little candid and say this. What happened was right around, I would say about 30 or so, or it's 30-ish. One thing I realized once I got to LA, I started to realize how many skills I actually had that were not entertainment related, which was very difficult because I had a lot of great skills as long as I was in the entertainment industry. And I could work both on stage, behind stage, and all of that because I spent so much time in that area. However, if I had to do anything outside of the arts, I was screwed. And I came from making from really good money on HBO to having to go through a period to where I got no work that was paying anywhere near what I worked towards to be able to do on The Wire. And that was an eye opener for me that I had no like really strong working skills outside of the arts to now survive. Because when that money died down and I had to pretty much figure out, okay, I'm now married in Los
Mm-hmm.
Angeles, California, um, and I have to go out here and survive, but not in the entertainment industry anymore. That's when the rude awakening kind of hit me that, like, dude, you can't really do anything that's worth anything past about $8 to $10 because for those that know what I'm talking about, when you're in the arts, you can't like do career jobs. You just can't. You have to find these side hustles, and it's a very sort of, I don't want to call it a nomadic life, but it's definitely sporadic, and it can be nomadic actually. Um, but you don't, you take on these odd jobs that you can get in and get out, but you don't really build any real skills in a corporate way, so so to speak. Um, and that really caught up with me in my 30s, my early 30s.
Yeah, that can be tough. And I've had few clients who have been artists, and they've got so much passion, and that
Mhm.
passion feeds the expression of art. And what you're sharing about that life, that there's no steady paycheck,
That's right.
that you may get a gig for a certain time and then it's gone. So it can be extremely hard. So tell me, like, tell us your entrepreneurial journey from there
Mhm.
and where are you right now?
Yeah, great question. The way I transitioned was I had to make a decision. I had, like, at that point in time, I had like good 15, almost 20 years invested into the art world. And I did have some technical training. So I said, I don't want to throw away all of that time and all of that energy that I put into that side of my life. So the transition actually was technical. I decided that, what, I'm going to go over to school and actually get some more credentials behind my name, build up my skills, and sort of continue in along the areas that I was in, but not in a performance capacity. So that led me to going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting when I was in LA. So I went there, and that's when I started learning about producing and executive producing. And I was already doing some video editing on the side myself, but I used that to kind of expand my understanding of the producing side of entertainment. That's what I used to honestly start segueing. And what I did from there, when I finished their program, I actually it took a little time. I'm skipping some things, but I actually started producing promotional videos for artists. So that honestly kind of is what segued me into doing more business on the art side. And eventually I kind of completely left that all together and started doing other things more so in business. But that's where the segue really started, was, I would say, from starting to produce.
Got it. So there are a lot of people who are thinking they want to leave their corporate job and transition into entrepreneurship. What would you tell them?
Okay, now, even with me growing up, second generation entrepreneur and all that stuff I said, the reality is there's so much more to being an entrepreneur. And I will say this, because I had the blessing of being an artist first and then kind of like not doing any art and going just straight business. The one thing that's afforded me the ability to be able to see is that they're really two sides of the same coin. Everything that I had to do to be successful as an artist is the exact same things, principally and character wise, that I needed to do to be an entrepreneur. So, with that said, and as an answer to your question, if you're looking to leave your job, understand you can definitely do it. There's so many things that makes doing business as a solopreneur possible now. So many things, so many tools, so many softwares, so many ways to leverage yourself and leverage your talents and also your energy. However, I will say this: you need to understand exactly what you're getting into, in the respect that there will be challenges, and I'll just tell you that most of your challenges, it won't be in the logistics, it won't be in the how to so much about the business, because we are definitely not in a deficit for gaining access to information by no stretch, especially at this point. However, the real nuance that I like to speak on that you need to know is it's going to have a lot to do with your character. That's going to probably be the most defining element on your journey. It's not going to be so much skill set, because you can pick up skills, but you know, going into business can put you into an adversarial relationship with yourself. And one of the reasons why I say that's because we all are adults, right? And when we become adults, we kind of forget or can lose the ability to have discipline to do the things that we need to do when we need to do them. And not because someone else is telling you. Because trust me, you probably glamorize the boss no longer being around and all that other good stuff. But those parameters that you have that are built in to that structure that you're working at your job, it's not as easy to replace those elements when you when you are in charge. So just understand that right now that's what it's going to take for you to really make this transition. There's going to be some changes. There's a lot of upside, but there's some challenges that comes along with it that I personally, as a business consultant, want you to be ready for.
So why don't you share with us the challenges you faced and how you overcame those?
Okay. I didn't really have, honestly, I didn't really have the discipline problem as much, but some of the challenges that I faced was not really starting off with a lot of resources financially. That was my issue. Not having a lot of money to kick the business off. You hear about, yeah, you want to do your business plan. You hear about, you want to basically get $5,000 and all this other stuff, or $10,000 saved up before you get started. Well, that just at the time for me wasn't in the cards. And, I believe, and I've been always of the school of thought, that you start where you are. Okay. And you can do that. That's what I did, but that's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. And that did create a lot of challenges. But what happened with that was where it created a lot of challenge for me by not necessarily having financial resources. It forced me to have to think more outside of the box. And honestly, I'm grateful for starting off that way now, because I won't go too long on this, but I'll say, well, I've learned with a lot of folks who do actually start off with money, what they tend to do is start throwing money at problems that are not money problems in business. They're typically problems of either innovation, or where you haven't pretty problem solved enough to figure out how to get it done without money. But when you start with money and you don't have a point of reference to know the difference between the two things, between it being a money problem and a problem of you just really not being resourceful enough, you don't really know that in the beginning. So you throw your money at the problem. But what happens in business is eventually those problems that are not money problems still remain problems, even if you throw money at them. And what runs out is the money. But what never runs out is your resourcefulness. So that's what I would say is, definitely focus on trying to solve your problems. Even if you have the money, make that your last resort. Because trust me, for someone that didn't start off with the money, there's always a way. And I don't mean illegal, but there's always a way to legally figure out how to solve a problem. Okay. Now I'll stop there.
Absolutely. You said it so beautifully. And the key is that as you're transitioning out, whether you're in a corporate job or whether you're in a retail job, whatever job you may be, sit down and think about what is your why. Is your why
Right.
strong enough to
Mm,
face the challenges of the what and how? The what and how can be figured out. If your why is not strong enough, oh, I'm not happy at job, that alone is not a good enough reason.
right.
Is there something that's like burning in your belly that will make you spring out of your bed day after day and say, you know what? Yes, I know that failure is part of it. Yes, I know that I am going to fall down and I am ready to get up. Because here's
Mm,
the thing, you can barter, you can exchange. Money is
yeah,
not the only thing. You can do collaborations, joint ventures, you can do so many different things.
right.
So now let's say, people have got started and you talk about future proofing your business. Give
Hmm.
us at length, how can people future proof their business?
Okay. Great. This is the fun part for me. All right. So, number one, the very first thing you must understand if you want to future proof your business, I'll frame this in a different way that I was going to before. About 70% of digital transformation initiatives that corporations were trying to deploy back as far as 2017 or so, what they found out was that the digital transformation initiatives were failing, not because of money, not because of technology, but mainly large in part due to the management, or I'll just say the people factor. People not being able to have the ability to change and adapt. We have to be able to adapt. And it starts with mindset first. We're living in a time and in an era that's extremely unique right now. It's extremely unique. And I don't think there's going to be a time like this for a long time. Some folks don't really see it and some do. But right now, your your strongest survival tactic, I should say, is going to be your ability to mentally condition yourself to learn, unlearn, and relearn literally everything that you may know now, and stay in a constant, I would say, state of mind of learning. Okay. And after you learn, apply. Because learning the information is great, but you have to apply it. You have to figure out ways to make it work for you. Without this adaptive factor, without being able to adapt what is happening, and what has happened prior to the pandemic even, is that many companies were dying. Now, we all kind of have seen this on some level or another when you look at a lot of the businesses that were going out of business in around 2017, 2018. They were going out of business by just like the truckload. It's literally thousands of businesses that were closing down. And it was large in part due to the fact that they had not made the transition for e-commerce. They didn't have their businesses online. And funny enough, I won't say funny, but I'll say that the interesting thing is that a lot of businesses that were able to prepare and make that transition were the businesses that were also more, I would say, prepped and ready to actually survive the pandemic. So that's what I would say. The first thing you must do is you must adjust your mindset to things. You've got to start learning new things, new skill sets. And they aren't all technical either, by the way. A lot of it has to do with your soft skills. It kind of goes back to what I said about a beginning entrepreneur. Everything kind of begins and ends in your mind, in your attitude, and in your ability to be able to mentally adjust and be malleable enough to start adopting and acquiring new skills. And by the way, last thing I'll say about that is that's not just me talking. World Economic Forum, this is some of the top 10 skills that they say that we would need for the future, for the years that we're in now, because this came out in 2000, I think 16 or 17. They're all soft skills, not all of them, but the top 10, about 5 or 6 are soft skills. Skills like problem solving, critical thinking, being able to relate to others, and being able to take complex ideas and concepts and being able to explain them in a simplistic and more palpable way. So I'll stop there. That's number one. Did you want me to continue, Divya?
Please continue.
Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing I would say, now that you've got your mindset pretty much prepped, you really want to take a look. Now, it depends on where you are. If you're starting business, that's a little bit of a different ball game. But if you're already in business, you need to take a look at your profit streams. I have something I call the pyramid of profit. And the pyramid of profit takes your profits or the things that are required to make profit and breaks them down to about 12 different areas. And without going into that, what I will say is that you want to make sure that you aren't bleeding money. You could be bleeding money in about, like I said, 12 different ways. And sometimes one of the easiest things is what you don't know that you don't know. So you need to really take a look at what you're doing. The best way I could probably help you with this is if you reached out to me and I can actually give you a free assessment on how you actually look at your profits and do this. But I would say that you want to look at I'll give you some examples. How dynamic are you in terms of how you charge or how you allow for your customers to pay? See, a lot of times we'll have business models that will only support one way of us making our money or one way of a person paying us. But just by breaking up.
Absolutely. So Mayo, can you give us some examples? Because so many
Sure.
times what happens is that when we talk about theory, people kind of get lost a little bit. So when you're talking about the profits
Mhm.
and the profit plans, if you could give like, a couple of stories or a couple of examples around that, that would be great.
Okay. So, okay, here's an example. Let's say that you have a product-based business, right? And the way that you make your the way that you make your money is by selling those products. Now, let's say you sell soap, okay? Or let's go better. Let's go with candles because you can charge a little more for candles. Let's say you go with candles. You have a candle business and you sell your candles at $25 per candle. Well, you're making money off the product, right? And you have a product based business, but you're not limited to just selling the product. What you can also do is then take and add a service to a product based business. And what that will do is diversify not just the business, but it actually diversifies your ways of making money with the same product without going into a whole nother business, which is a lot of a problem that I see people get too diversified and get unfocused. However, by adding a service, so what would that service be as an example? Well, perhaps the service could be something like, hey, if when you're done with the candle, you can send the candle back to us and then we will refill the candle at less to charge. Something like that. That's just an idea off the top of my head. But the idea here is that you find a way to bring more value to the customer by adding more than just a product, but also adding a service to that product, thus diversifying your income because now you can charge something separate, but that's still related to the same product. And then it does the other beautiful thing of adding more value to the same customer. Okay. And that'll help you make even more money over time, thus increasing your LTV or lifetime value to that customer. Is that a decent example or would you like more?
No, that's fantastic. I love that because so many
Yeah.
times people think like, oh, I got a niche. And yes, you're absolutely right. Because the more you niche, you cannot serve everyone. And
Right.
when you're niching your business down, you are serving your ideal clients. Now, that
Mm-hmm.
said, and happy to share an example of one of my clients. So, we had helped one of our clients write a book.
Mm-hmm.
She is a hypnotherapist. And so,
Mm-hmm.
basically, as she wrote the book became her tool to grow her business. Where
Mm-hmm.
what started happening was that now other hypnotists are reaching out to her for her books because they don't have the time to write the book and they're
Mm,
using her books as a tool to grow their business. So now what started out with just one book,
mhm,
it became a tool to help others. And now, not only that, a doctor who has a business throughout the US is approaching her. So
mhm,
these are like, taking one tool or creating a tool that can bring in income from multiple sources. Like, so
right.
for example, your book can become a gateway to your courses, your book can become a gateway to your speeches, it can become the gateway to your content or to your coaching. Like, you can take a book and then, like, my 10 steps
Yes.
of coaching. So thinking about in multiple purposes. So as you have said, and as we get closer to the end of our show, what would be some actionable tips that that entrepreneurs can take and implement it in their business straight away?
Good question. You know what? I start with this because I think this is a good piggyback off of what I just said. Now, what I just said, I really want to be clear. This is different. And because I hear a lot about diversification all the time, and you want to diversify, diversify. And though that can be true, I think what happens with that statement, you know, is that there's some nuance, I like to call some wisdom that you need to add to it. Because I see a lot of people making this mistake. You know, the way I just explained diversification, it was all related to the same focus. So what that would not do is take you too far away from your initial business to where you will become distracted. The mistake that I see some folks make is they start basically doing 2 and 3 businesses at a time without actually being successful at the first business. When you do this, what you end up doing is every problem that you have in business, you duplicate times the amount of businesses that you just created, because you never learn how to solve those problems in the first business. Okay, so um, start learning how to diversify within your one business first. And once you've gotten that business to a point, you've scaled it, it's where it needs to be, you're successful, then you want to look at diversification into another business. Once you really got a hold of the one that you have and you're successful with that enough, okay, to where now you can bring on something else. If you don't, you'll just duplicate problems. Okay. And eventually you end up with a three-headed monster. Okay. That end up will either kill you or you will have to kill it. That's the best way I'll say it. That's my first tip. My second tip is this. Um, and this really honestly does depend on where you are in business. If you're just starting, that's one thing. And if you're a little further along the way, then that's a little bit different. Some of the things that you need might be different. But wherever you are, it goes back to what I said. Guys, technology right now is huge. And especially as this relates to things like artificial intelligence, which I believe for some folks is more of a sleeper and they don't really realize how much it's actually taken over. And this is not to put a negative damper on things, but we have to be realistic. We need to understand what this technology is doing, how it works. And the reason why you need to really be starting to learn more about technology is because you can use it and ride the wave of it. You can't change it, but you can use it. But you got to understand how it works to figure out how to incorporate it into your business and be very adaptable with it. Because what some of you may find is that some of this technology is moving into your space, and you have to figure out a way to deal with that sooner than later. So, because I'll give you a few just to give you more value here. You definitely want to start learning as quickly as you can about cryptocurrency. Okay. I know some of you maybe have avoided that, but that's coming. We're coming to a point now where this is getting into legislation. So it's serious. And it's going to have a lot to do with things like the metaverse. These buzzwords that you're hearing, they come with a lot of understanding, but you need to start at some point because honestly, folks, every business that we have is going to start being affected by these technologies, literally about every business. So that's really the second thing I would definitely offer. You've got to start learning about the technology. If you want information on some of this, you guys will be able to reach out to me if you like, as to get a starting point. And I would tell you even right now, you might even want to start with the fourth industrial revolution and just understand from a very, very high level as to what these technologies are and how they're going to affect things. That's a good place to start because they really speak at a high level when they talk within the fourth industrial revolution sort of realm. I'm trying to think of what else I could give you right now. You could reach out to me and I can give you an idea. I'm giving away, and this is courtesy to Divya and her listeners. I am doing some complimentary assessments that you guys can sign up for. All you have to do is reach out to me in my email. Let me know that you were on the show and you were listening and you're interested in finding out where you are in terms of your profits. I'll actually give you guys the ability to do that. And I'll stop there because I don't want to get ahead of whatever Divya wants to do here for that. But yeah, that will be my last tip for now, I guess.
No, a lot of value there. And Mayo, do you want to share how people can reach out to you?
Absolutely. You guys can reach me at Mayo Best at paradigm2digital.com. That's Mayo Best, MAYOBEST, Paradigm, PARADIGMTODIGITAL, paradigm2digital.com.
Well, fantastic, folks. Thank you, Mayo. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. And thank you, Jason, for the wonderful support that you have provided. And until next time, be well and take care.
Hey, thank you too, Divya. Thank you, Jason. See you guys.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.